Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. The other day, one subscriber put forward an in-depth theory on how the DCEU will be fixed in The Flash. Now before I read this whole explanation, I was skeptical because I thought he may have just been a wishful thinker who was hoping the DCEU wouldn't erase the Snyderverse. However, after reading everything he said, I think this theory is very interesting, quite plausible, and is actually a really good way to fix the DCEU, as well as allowing the Snyderverse to live on in a separate universe. So please make sure to listen to his entire explanation before making your mind up, because once I heard the whole thing, the DCEU seemed to slot perfectly into place, and if true, has reignited my investment into the DCEU. We will read everything he has to say, and then I will leave it up to you to decide whether or not you think this could be what is happening in the DCEU. So, this is John Venz's comments. He said, "Hey, our movie review. I know you're very passionate about the Snyderverse, and I just wanted you to know that I figured it all out. The Flash is not erasing the Snyderverse. It is leaving the door open for it to continue, but also making a new DCEU that is separate from it so they can both exist on their own." Okay, so I hope this could ease your mind and also blow your mind at the same time. And I hate to ask, but if you could maybe make a video about this and go over it with the rest of the Snyderverse community, because we're all struggling hard right now, and I just want to give them some hope, or at least provide a little bit of insight into what's going on that might be able to help them get through this terrible time being a DC fan. So, Barry is going to go back in time to save his mum, but he is going to end up creating a separate branched timeline. That is the same as the Snyderverse, but with a rewritten history. So a lot of things have changed and are very different. This is the Multiverse DCEU. For those of you who don't know, Multiverse relates to Walter Hamada, who is the DC president. In this branched timeline, the ending of Man of Steel was changed, and BVS never ended up happening, and a few other things were changed too. So, for example, Zod and Feora lived and Robin never died because of the recent confirmation of Robin being in Batgirl. So, Batfleck never went on a dark path that led to him to BVS, Superman never died, and Wonder Woman 84 and Aquaman 1 and presumably 2 exist here in this new universe because of Mira's American accent that is different from her British Snyderverse accent. The other Barry in the trailer is the Barry from the rewritten history version of the DCEU, and in the movie, he'll meet Snyderverse Barry, who is stuck there after creating it, and they get talking, and the Hamadaverse Barry tells Snyderverse Barry all about the world they live in, and everything. In this world, there is a version of Batfleck in this timeline who will die and be replaced by Keaton. For whatever reason, we don't know. Barry and other Barry end up in Keaton's timeline at some point during the movie, and they meet Sasha Calle's Supergirl, and they bring both of them back to the new Barry's timeline. I'm just speculating here, Reverse Flash probably shows up and is probably from Keaton's timeline and ends up destroying his own timeline, and from the looks of it, judging from the fact that Supergirl was locked up, Keaton's Batman world is probably a dystopian police state, and at some point it may have went to chaos like Reverse Flash's world in the comics. And when they bring them back, eventually at some point in the movie, Batfleck dies and Keaton replaces him. Whether Sasha Calle's Supergirl has Henry as her Superman at the end of this or not, and whether he gets erased or killed as Superman in their universe or not, still remains to be seen. But the Superman in this universe is Henry Cavill, at least up to this point, and it could still be him in the future, but there is still a possibility he will ask to be erased or replaced. But I think he'll stay playing on both sides personally. Anyway, we know it's him because there is a Henry Cavill Superman toy in Shazam, and he has the same suit and physique as the headless Superman who appeared in the movie. But little did we know, Shazam took place in this different timeline all along. Here's how I know the recent DC movies have all been in this rewritten DCE universe all along. In this timeline, Wonder Woman 84 exists, Aquaman 1 exists, Shazam exists, Birds of Prey exists, the Suicide Squad exists, Peacemaker exists, Black Adam exists, Batgirl exists, and Aquaman 2 exists. In Aquaman 1, Arthur makes a comment about how he just got done fighting Steppenwolf. He did, but it wasn't ZSJL. It was either Justice League or just a different version of the fight and situation entirely. But we do know that these versions of the characters did meet up, so we know a Justice League type team was already established, but without Cyborg, so Steppenwolf wasn't there to synchronize the unity. They can easily say in this universe that Cyborg never got in an accident, and that those events never happened to him to write Ray Fisher out of the Multiverse. Whether it was Justice League, which would create a ton of plot holes, or a different version of the fight, I'm sure they'll have at least a brief demonstration in the movie about how all of these characters met up before Aquaman 1. Anyway, in this universe, Cavill's Superman never died because in Shazam, he was wearing the blue suit, so he didn't need healing, and because he didn't die, the mother boxes were never activated. So, when we see him in the movie, that guy who said he worked with Cavill and Affleck on the set of Flash was not lying, and Grace was only fed what Warner Brothers wants to feed her, so she's being kept in the dark a little bit. She said a long while back that Wonder Woman 84 was the start of a reboot. She was not wrong, she was just not given the full picture. Wonder Woman 84 does exist in this new DCEU timeline, so she never gave up on humanity and kept operating as a vigilante type hero, but she probably destroyed the cameras just because she didn't want to be seen, not because any other reason. In Birds of Prey, it says that Batman is missing, and in that movie, Joker broke up with Harley, but that doesn't contradict the ending of what David Ayer's Suicide Squad was going to be, which was Harley and Joker mutually leaving each other. So, this does allow the Ayer cut to exist in Snyder's world, because in David Ayer's Suicide Squad, it's changed in the movie that Harley wasn't an accomplice in killing Robin, and that it was all Joker. As we know, in the new timeline, Robin is alive and not dead, so Suicide Squad 2016, or David's Suicide Squad, never happened. But anyway, in that movie, Birds of Prey, it says that Batman is missing, and that appears to make sense because in the Flash movie, Batfleck either disappears or dies, and Keaton replaces him and plays a Batman Beyond type role to Barbara behind the scenes while she takes on the Batman duties, and her and the Birds of Prey will eventually meet, so that confirms the Birds of Prey exists in this new universe. The Suicide Squad also exists in this universe. The proof is in Rick Flag. He is a completely different person that he was in David Ayer's Suicide Squad, because that version exists in the Snyderverse. This version of Rick Flag is in the new DCEU. Also in Birds of Prey, it was established that her and Boomerang have had a long friendship, with her smiling at the Captain Boomerang missing in action poster. In the Suicide Squad, he died and so did Rick Flag, but they were not the same versions we've seen in David Ayer's movie. Also, Olivia Harcourt in the Suicide Squad is supposed to be in Black Adam, and Black Adam exists in this universe because he was already shown to exist in Shazam, who I have just shown also exists in this universe. So that confirms Black Adam and the Suicide Squad exist in this universe. Now, it has been said that there is a cameo of Wonder Woman in Shazam 2. There is, because this is the Wonder Woman 1984 Patty Jenkins version of Wonder Woman that exists in this new DCEU. So, Batfleck dies in the Walter Hamada DCEU, but he still exists in Zack's. Henry may or may not die in The Flash, but he still exists in Zack's, which is why he said he would like to make a solo movie that takes place before ZSJL 2, because that universe is still an option. So, his place is still unsure. And that's why James Gunn, whose movie is in the new DCEU, said that he doesn't know if it was Cavill who Bloodsport shot. And that's why The Rock says he doesn't know if it's going to be Henry Cavill's Superman who he fights. We were all led astray, and this was a misdirection campaign by Warner Brothers and DC all along. And it makes perfect sense. The VFX team for ZSJL said their interest in DC films was reignited with The Flash, so they returned, and they weren't just saying that for no reason. At the end of this movie, Michael Keaton's Batman helps ZSJL Barry to return to his universe, where the Snyderverse is intact. Remember the set pictures at the courthouse? They returned because they know the movie leaves the door open for the Snyderverse to continue and for all other DC universes to exist alongside this new mainline DCEU. When Andy Muschietti said that Christina Hodson wrote a great script and Ben returned because he liked the script and Keaton agreed to do it because he liked the script, they weren't lying. This is a great script because it allows us to all have the best of both worlds, while also allowing other universes in the multiverse to exist too, like the Batman universe. The only thing is, Ben did say he would rather enjoy the experience of Batman rather than being super wrapped up in the process and have to deal with the responsibility of making his own movie, or making sure they are getting his character right in someone else's movie. I think he would only return if Zack gave him a call because he trusts Zack and knows Zack is passionate and loves these characters and always creates a great and open and fun atmosphere with his movies. So he would return in an instant, but I don't know if he would do any other movies unless he fully trusted whoever the director was, or just had a small appearance. But regardless, this is a great thing because it allows Zack to have full creative freedom and the DCEU to do whatever they want to do. And Zack continuously giving out hints about his return checks out with this. And Ezra saying that The Flash is not erasing Zack's movies makes this check out as well, because he never really said it didn't, because for the new timeline they do, but the Snyderverse becomes separate and is able to exist in its own timeline. He goes on to say that this will allow Snyder to have full creative freedom whilst the main DCEU tells its own story. He added that Snyder has been hinting at his Justice League films recently, and Ezra did confirm that the movie does not erase Snyder's work. So that is his theory for the DCEU. A lot of detail and a lot of research, which I do praise because this looks like it took him a long time. The only thing I would question is if Hamada would allow the Snyderverse to continue. I'm not sure if he or the executives at Warner Brothers would allow or want Snyder to return, bearing in mind they made such an effort to remove Snyder from the DCEU in the first place. But that may be because they wanted to go down a different story using the multiverse route of having different universes telling different stories. If this is true, then I would be reinvested into the main DCEU, because the biggest problem I had was that I thought they were going to erase my favourite DC movies just because they hate Snyder, instead of focusing on telling a good story and having a long-term plan. But if this was the plan all along, then they are going to erase the Snyderverse from the main timeline, but will actually allow Snyder to continue his story in his own universe. But like I just said, I can't see the executives at Warner Brothers or Walter Hamada allowing this to happen. I thought they were going to erase Snyder's work because they didn't like Snyder's DC films. I never thought that they would do this so they could create different timelines to tell different stories. I thought they were only doing this because they hate Snyder. But this theory could mean the Snyderverse lives on purpose, and this was their plan all along. I would love this to be the case, but I'm gonna be 50-50 on this theory. The optimistic side of me would see that Snyder has been hinting at the next Justice League stories recently, and the VFX supervisor who worked on the Snyder Cut, who is a big fan of Snyder, said that they were done and that they weren't coming back. But when they read the Flash script, they came back. So there must be something good in that script for them to return that isn't insulting to Snyder's work. So there are parts that make sense, and I really want this to be true, but I need to hear what you all think about this first. This theory could possibly decide whether or not I do DCEU updates again, because if they aren't going to destroy my favourite DCEU films and are just allowing separate stories to go ahead at the same time, then I can be reinvested in the DCEU, because I know they have a plan. But this is all down to you guys, so please make sure to let me know what you think about this theory in the comments below. But that is all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe and turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. I hope to see you here again soon, so until then, have a great day. Bye!